Hello, Tim.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
What's up?
Oh, not too much. Just hanging out here in Costa Mesa.
Oh, you're in Los Angeles.
Yes, I am.
We should probably include you on the group chat. We went down to the OC Fair yesterday.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was really crowded.
was the OSA Fair actually open? I thought they only opened in August.
It was the OC Street Fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, near Chapman University. Actually, uh, I am hoping that a guest star will jump on, newly appointed scholar at Chapman University, and one of the foremost world authorities on the economics of monasteries.
Oh, really? It's interesting because I actually graduated from Chapman.
You did?
I
Well,
did.
he is doing his postdoctoral fellowship at Chapman, and his dissertation was on monasteries as legitimating agents in Christian societies.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. He's working on turning his dissertation into articles that he's going to publish.
Awesome.
Yeah. What'd you study at Chapman?
I was a film and television major.
Very different than being an economics major. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Marcus has a PhD in economics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of friends that went to the business school there.
I mean, so Dr. Marcus got his PhD in economics from George Mason University.
Okay.
Not sure if you're aware of the School of Economics at George Mason University, but it's actually quite famous for uh, being somewhat engaged with Austrian economics. So people on the right tend to like it very much,
Okay.
and Chapman University is probably known as the most conservative university in Southern California, wouldn't you say?
Kind of, except for the religious department was the main group that was heading up the Jesus seminar, and the dean was the one that translated the Gnostic Gospels.
Personally, I actually like the Jesus seminar. I know that makes me a heretic.
Well, it doesn't matter. You're Jewish, so
Second, yeah, I mean the religious department. So this was the weird thing. When I went to USC, I specifically did go to USC because I thought it was conservative,
okay.
right? And I did take some classes on ethics, but I was really surprised that the classes on ethics were in the religion department. So I asked one of the professors, like, why is this, like, because we were like, the class I took was issues in death and dying.
Yeah.
And like it was completely a question of like ethics of like euthanasia and stuff like that. And I was like, why is this in the religion department? And why doesn't anybody study religion in the religion department at USC? And and I was promptly explained to me that basically the religion departments have become, in most universities, have become where you study ethics and not religion,
Okay.
because I guess they expect everybody who actually believes in God to go to seminary or something.
Okay. So they assume that they go to Biola or Loyola.
Well, I mean, yeah, Biola. I mean, does Chapman undergrad even have a code or requirements for the students to be Christians or anything like that?
Nope. Matter of fact, I didn't even know it was a Christian school until I actually got there for my first year.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't think Yeshiva University. I'm not aware that Yeshiva University requires its undergraduates to like be Jewishly observant in any way. That's that and Touro University are the two Orthodox Jewish
okay.
universities, and I'm 99% sure Touro University also doesn't require. It just makes it possible. Like I had a lot of friends who went to Touro because they didn't have to worry about um, ever having to go to school on any type of what you call it. Uh, Cal says they require Talmud classes. I'm not sure who you're saying requires Talmud classes, but like that sounds really weird to me because all of them are co-educational and many Orthodox Jewish women will not study Talmud. Why you, he says. Okay. Although, I mean, if anybody's going to require females to study Talmud, it would be YU.
So, Jacob, I have a question. I don't think you can answer it because I'm not sure even. I may be pronouncing his name wrong. Yosef.
Yeah.
When Yosef and Father Stephen DeYoung were talking on your stream a couple days ago about the prayers against Christians.
Birkat HaMinim, yeah.
Yeah. Yosef made the comment of that it was actually more directed at the sort of the spies from the government.
So the actual words, so the Birkat HaMinim, which is literally it translates to blessing of the heretics.
Yeah.
Okay. So the words, which it's, I mean, we have very early words. It's the wording is out of the Talmud. Is leminim ul malshinim al tehi tikva. So the minim, so a min literally is a sectarian, somebody who causes division,
Okay.
schismatics, you could say.
Yeah.
Ul malshinim, and malshinim literally means informers.
Okay.
And so one really big deal, including during the life of Jesus, was the people, and that's actually where the whole thing of tax collectors comes from, was people who were basically traitors in relation to the Roman government, right? For people who were cooperating with the Roman government, people who would take other Jews to the court systems of the Romans, or basically inform on them, right?
Right.
And one thing you have to realize is it did not take very much for a Roman just to decide to kill. Like there was very little due process.
Right.
You know, you pointed somebody else, somebody you didn't like, to the local centurion, and he died pretty soon after that, right?
Right.
And so, and this was part of the thing that I've always brought up is like, yeah, I suppose the Christians may have had this idea of like, oh, well, I'm not going to go to a synagogue where they pronounce, you know, where the person who's leading the prayers says this blessing of the heretics in the Amidah, which is the main part of what we refer to as the prayers. Like you could say, like the main liturgy is the recitation of the Amidah, which,
Right.
and
That's
this
actually,
is this
that's
is
actually where
yeah.
my question is actually going towards, is that specific statement you just made. Is I think there might be an easy way that actually potentially answers the way that you're seeing it, as well
Mhm.
as maybe, and granted, it's going to probably be a thing from absent of evidence, but if you think about it, the time period when it came back into use, at least if I understood what Yosef was saying correctly, it's the same time period when the church suddenly became an organ of the Roman government itself.
Yeah.
In which case, if you look at it, one of the big ones, and because you guys brought up John Chrysostom, if you remember, or maybe you don't know, John Chrysostom was not liked by the elites of his day. Matter of fact, there was a huge massacre when he baptized a group of Christians. They came in and killed all the catechumens, and then
I
put
did
him.
not know that.
Yeah, and so my thinking is potentially what John Chrysostom was doing when he was writing that is basically using church, the whole thing with being in the religion, but that pissed off the elites because it made it harder for them to hide their informants among the Christian community in Jewish synagogues then.
Well, okay, I'm not sure I understand where you're going with this. So you're saying the Christians, so there were Christians, so John Chrysostom famously made the liturgy of the Eastern Orthodox, right?
Yeah, he made a modified version. I think the older one is Basil and James.
Okay. And so what you're saying is that the Christians at the time may not have been very friendly with the Romans, and so calling out the Malshinim, the informers, may have been like a friendly thing between the Jews and Christians?
Yeah, like it's basically, well, I don't know if you could say, I don't think there's enough there to say it was necessarily friendly, but it could be maybe one of the reasons why, because it sounded like Yosef was saying there wasn't anything written on the Jewish side of kicking the Christians out, that maybe they didn't have to because John Chrysostom already did it, but that pissed off the authorities because they could no longer hide their informants among the Christians.
Oh, so you think the authorities had Christians who had informers who would pretend to be Christians and go to the synagogues?
I would even go a step further and say that some of the informers may have been Christians themselves, because by that point, the Roman Empire were full of Christians in the empire, or at least in name only. You know what I mean? Because that's right around, John Chrysostom was right around the time of Emperor Theodosius. And he's the one that made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. And that's where a lot of people get confused. Constantine only stopped the persecution of Christians.
Right.
They can no longer be persecuted. But it wasn't until Emperor Theodosius that it actually became a Christian empire.
Give me 1 second. I will be back in a minute. Yeah, I really don't know. It's just, it seems to me that if you're kicking out the Christians, like the blessing of the heretics just seems really weak sauce in terms of kicking people out, because it may be kind of like, hey, you're not welcome here, and maybe people would feel unwelcome. And to answer Elijah, I am not aware that there's any actual evidence that this was the cause of Christians no longer being in the synagogue. The thing is, the question has been, and the question basically has to be, anytime you're reading Acts, and like reading the letters of Paul,
right?
The question is, okay, so there was a Christian community within the Jewish community, and it's obvious that the Christian community started out of the Jewish community.
Yep.
At what point were there points of separation? And certain things, like the expulsion of the Jews of certain areas,
Yeah.
certainly made Christian churches in those areas vastly more Gentile.
Yeah.
Right? Because those areas simply didn't have Jews. And there is a little bit of evidence from the Cairo Geniza that there may have persisted some Christian, and I mean this is the big thing of Shem Tov's Matthew, right? Which is the question of how long did Jewish Christians persist in the Jewish community. And if you believe that Shem Tov's Matthew is original, which frankly, I don't think is as crazy idea as most people pretend it is, right? Well, I mean, Cal says, wouldn't the separation occur immediately? There seems to be some serious theological differences. And I would say Acts 5 kind of says no. I personally don't think that what's his name? Paul of Tarsus ended up being lashed for theological differences. He was just an asshole. Sorry. He seems to have caused problems everywhere he went, among Christians and Gentiles, and Jews and Gentiles. So like, the question becomes, when did we actually, like, what exactly is the Jewish so if and I keep on sending people to a video of Rabbi Skobach from a while back, where he discusses this idea. Let's say that you have an Orthodox Jew who actually is living as an Orthodox Jew, and isn't a Trinitarian, right? Let's say that Orthodox Jew has all of the beliefs that Sam Tiedemann, right, our favorite Unitarian, has. And he was born Jewish, right? 100% Jewish. So there's no question whether or not he is part of Israel. And he was observant, right? He kept kosher, he kept the Sabbath, he said the prayers, he said the normal prayers everybody else says, right? Elijah is doing his normal thing in the chat. Would we have any way of, like, would that person be persona non grata in a Jewish in an Orthodox Jewish community? Now, possibly if he was trying to spread his ideas, which people would say are dangerous, maybe a community would decide, you know what, we don't care, we don't want you in our community. You're spreading dangerous ideas which may, God forbid, lead someone to become a Trinitarian, even if you yourself are not a Trinitarian. But Rabbi Skobach has said, and I can only say on the authority of what Rabbi Skobach said, that there is a serious question of whether this person is within Elijah doing what Elijah does, or even worse, mixed dancing. uh, the So anybody who doesn't understand the joke, in modern Orthodox Judaism, there's a question, there's a joke, which we find very funny, which is, you know how bad premarital sex is? It could lead to mixed dancing, which in an Orthodox Jewish standpoint is a funny joke. So anyway, back to the Unitarian Orthodox Jew. I personally don't see anything that Sam believes in penal substitutionary atonement. So let's also get rid of penal substitutionary atonement. Other than the Trinity, penal substitutionary atonement, I don't know what exactly would make that person not a persona non grata in a Jewish in an Orthodox Jewish environment. I do not know the story of the Satmar Rebbe and mixed dancing. I know the story of the Chabad Rebbe and mixed dancing, but I don't know the story of the Satmar Rebbe and mixed dancing. Did I say anything at all interesting, Tim?
Yeah, I think where my head's going is not even just looking at the religious differences, but just continuing on the continued mistrust of Rome that was already there even before Christianity existed. As that the Christians that were working for the state would probably feel a lot more uncomfortable with that prayer as opposed to just a normal, everyday, non-government official Christian.
I mean, there definitely there's a lot of people, especially today, who feel like, well, the great apostasy narrative, which is the Christian church went wrong when it started being a getting involved in politics.
Right.
Is that the type of thing you're kind of getting at?
I guess you could say it's related, but I wouldn't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at it, just let's say we're in that time period and you still have the huge mistrust against Rome.
Right.
And that's where that, from what I was understanding from Yosef, was that's where that originally originated from, was because of the informers. That once Christianity and Rome became one and the same, it blurred the lines. And so I could see how eventually over time, through the game of telephone, if the prayer would then apply to all Christians instead of just Christians that were informers for Rome.
I mean, yeah, the thing is, it's like, okay, do you think it's applying to you? Because it's not like, look, I have been in synagogue and I've led the prayers, and I have pronounced Birkat Haminim several times, many times, and I say it in my. First of all, I do have to point out that this is only said in the weekday prayers, it's not in the Sabbath prayers.
Okay.
But like, it's never a point where I am supposed to where I am supposed to determine, well, that person, like it's not practical. It's just a prayer that we say. And I still don't get why, if somebody else thinks that I am a heretic, why them saying the prayers would make me stop going to the synagogue, because I don't think it applies to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it kind
it's
of.
not like it's
I'm
not like
trying
the
to. I guess what
prayer.
I'm trying to build parallels towards how our modern CIA state, basically embeds themselves in movements to try and overthrow those movements, or at least confuse everybody. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And so, from that perspective, if there were good meaning, Christians working for the Roman state, I could see how that could get misinterpreted because it was always pointed towards the informers.
Okay,
In
but
you know what I mean?
again, I don't understand. Fine, it's various people have various like ideas when it's like when the liturgy is being said, but ultimately, I want to understand the mechanism by which this causes some sort of separation in the Jewish community, and I don't think it really did.
I,
I
I
I think the Jews and the Jewish Christians were really destroyed by the Gentile Christians. I don't think there was the persecution. And like Christians really do have this idea that there was like a Jewish persecution of the church, which I think is completely ahistorical and completely without warrant, including the supposed murder of Stephen, which, I mean, I think I've spoken to Father Stephen about. He thinks it was popular like riot, like, but like I just I don't see how any of that actually is a historical thing. I am going to go grab my dinner. I will
sure.
be back. Feel free to lecture to my audience all about your weird Christian ideas.
Nah. Uh,
I am trying to eat more healthily, so now I have an air fryer, and I air fried some steaks, but
ooh.
I am still learning how to do it properly. So let's see if these are as overcooked as the ones I made yesterday. Not as overcooked, although I cooked them like half as much as I did yesterday.
Wow. Yeah, I'm like I said, it's more just trying to, I guess, look at it more from just because I think you're right. I don't, I think there were several things that happened politically that caused the fissures just to grow over time, as
Mhm.
opposed to being like a done deal at any particular point in time. And I'm just seeing this as potentially one of the fissures. The other one I see is sort of the Benkara revolt.
Mhm.
In the, I think there was definitely some mistrust of the Jewish Christians from the Jewish community because they didn't want to help fight against Rome after they destroyed the temple.
Well, that's a question I'm not so sure about. I mean,
Okay.
really were, and this is okay. So this is Eisenberg's whole idea. Robert Eisenman, not Eisenberg, is he thinks that there were Pauline Christians and Jewish Christians, and the Pauline Christians were the ones who went along with the Romans,
Okay.
I don't know that the Pauline Christians were as pacifist as they may have been, as like certainly the Anabaptists kind of have this idea that the early Christians were all pacifists. And it's like, well, I mean, Jesus did tell them to buy a sword, right? Like those swords were being used for something.
Yeah. No, I mean that kind of goes back to my question I had, a couple weeks ago when I was asking about what the Jewish perspective on, war is,
Hmm.
to sort of understand maybe if there's any differences between the Orthodox understanding of war. And as far as I could tell from your answer, it sounds like it's very similar that, we should avoid war at all costs, but sometimes, you do have to defend your, the weakest in your tribe, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can honestly read the Jewish or Christian scriptures and be an actual pacifist, like 100% pacifist. I don't think that's an honest reading of the scriptures, including the Christian scriptures. Like, I think pacifists. I got kind of mad at Preston Sprinkle for some of the stuff he said. He's like, I like him a lot, but he recently tweeted some pacifist stuff, especially about Israel, that made me unfollow him.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I just don't see how the pacifists really. I don't think they're making a lot of sense. I really don't.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I mean, because there's a whole dialogue, and I can't tell you exactly where it was in church history, but during a lot of the debates with Christianity and Islam,
Mm.
uh, there was one particular debate that was recorded where the Islam scholars were basically saying, because you're Christian, you're supposed to turn the other cheek. Basically, you should not be fighting us, taking over your country. And the response from the clerics were, yes, that's true, but they use the passage that there's no greater love than for a man to lay down the life for his brother,
Mm.
and that we have to hold up both.
Mm.
um, and
I
so,
mean, people talk about Jainism as being very pacifistic, but I
okay,
think if you look at the history of even the Jain community, at some point where your nuns are being raped enough, which
yeah,
happened a lot during Jain history, even the Jains started fighting back.
right. Yeah, I mean, even taking it more personal, that there was that whole movement, in the mid 2000s and even earlier that, never fight a bully, you're supposed to just sort of turn the other cheek. And it's like sometimes you just have to punch the bully to make them leave you alone. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of been a, yeah. Anyways, yeah, I was just curious if that was,
I mean, I see what you mean in terms of there being confusion over the hundreds of years about like what was meant and who was meant.
right.
But I mean, so the two parts of the Christian Bible that really surprised me were Mark 12 and Acts 5. And in both cases, I was like, what have we been fighting about for 2,000 years? Right? Especially Acts 5.
Can you refresh my mind what X5 was again?
Sure. So in Acts 5, the apostles are spreading the gospel of Jesus being the Messiah, and they get caught by the Sanhedrin, and there's a debate as to what to do. And Gamaliel the first is stands up and says, "Look, it doesn't matter. There have been candidates for Messiah before, and people followed them, and nothing came out of it. And if these people are right about their candidate for Messiah, then they'll be right, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if they're wrong about their candidate for Messiah, they'll be wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you fight against them, you will find yourself, you might, God forbid, find yourself fighting against God, right?
Right. Yeah.
And despite the fact that we have no reason from Jewish sources to believe that this incident ever happened, every Jew I've ever discussed this with, and Rabbi Skobak in that particular video actually starts with this scene from Acts 5, says, like, yeah, this sounds perfectly Jewish.
Right.
Right? It's like, okay, you think Jesus will be the Messiah. And I have to say, until I learned the word preterism, when Christians told me they believe Jesus is the Messiah, I understood it completely differently from how Christians think they mean Jesus is the Messiah. Because I look out my window and I see, like, have you lost your mind? Like, what? And like, yeah, Christians don't believe Jesus is the Messiah the way a Jew, when he believes somebody is the Messiah, believes that person is the Messiah.
Can you refresh my mind what that difference is again?
Well, like, the Messiah makes the world be a much better place than it is now. Most specifically, I would say, the entire world. Well, I mean, Jeremiah 31 says, "No longer will brother teach his brother to know God, because everyone from the least to the greatest will know God." And yes, Trey, we are all good. No thanks to you. Trey tried to send some assassins my way, and they failed. I'll just put it that way. Okay. But yeah, I mean, like, if the Messiah had come, like, when a Christian says the Messiah has come, they mean already and not yet. And I learned these words, already and not yet, from Christians. And it's like, okay, so you have some weird beliefs, like, what about time, and that's cute, right? But you're not actually saying, like, we live in the Messianic era, which makes, the weird things you say cute, but not nearly as heretical and crazy as what it sounds like to me.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, even when you break it down to that part, there's even debates of what it means to be in the Messianic age, depending on which denomination of Christians you're looking at, though, too.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why Christians are constantly arguing over pre-mill, post-mill, a-mill.
Yeah.
This mill, that mill. And, like, what can I say? It's like, dude, you guys, you don't seem to have gotten the message in Acts 5 from which, I mean, Gamliel seems to be cited there quite approvingly. So, like, And he is officially a saint in the Eastern Orthodox, and I believe also in the Catholic Church.
Okay, I don't know if I'm not aware of that, even though I'm Eastern Orthodox, but
He's Gamliel is definitely a saint. Actually, so Father Stephen's new book is coming out in not long so while, and he gave me further permission to discuss it even more so than I was before. And one suggestion I did make upon reading his book, he didn't. I think he expanded how much he spoke about Gamliel, but based on his book, I mean, it appears to be that the figure which both Jews and Christians claim to have saintly status is actually Gamliel the First,
okay,
who lived after Jesus.
okay,
So he's a figure within Judaism, and there's all these stories which the Eastern Orthodox have about Stephen being a disciple of Gamliel, and Paul being a disciple of Gamliel, and apparently other people, Barnabas being a student of Gamliel.
I was aware of those. I didn't know he was a saint though.
And so his family, his grandsons and great grandsons, can, in a very real sense, be said to be the founders of Rabbinic Judaism. I mean, obviously, I would say, Moses was the founder of Rabbinic Judaism, but I mean, Gamliel was a descendant of Hillel, and Rabbi Judah the Prince, who redacted the Mishnah, was a grandson of Gamliel. And the Talmud, both Talmuds, are commentaries on the Mishnah, right?
Yeah.
So, like, the teachings of the family, the house of Gamliel the First, are fundamental to what is referred to as Rabbinic Judaism.
Which reminds me, this question, kind of a side thing. In the Babylonian Talmud, I don't know if what I read on the online is true or not, and I'm curious if you're aware of it.
I have heard this question many times. Go ahead.
There's a story in there during the destruction of the temple.
Yes.
Where a hand of fire comes down from heaven and they toss the keys to heaven.
I don't know the story. Go ahead.
And I was curious if that's really in there or somebody was just making that up.
It sounds like the type of story that could be in the Talmud or in the Midrash.
Okay.
You have to realize that the Midrash is even much larger than the Talmuds. The Babylonian Talmud, if you were to read one page of it a day, every day, it would take you 7.5 years to finish it.
Okay.
And somebody with my background in Judaism could maybe by myself just read a page of Talmud in probably about 3 hours a day.
Okay.
There are classes where people like go through the Talmud page. Like there's a thing where people study a page of Talmud every day. Yosef has been doing this for 10 years now. And there are classes you can find online which do it in as little as half an hour, but that's like considered really breakneck speed and really is only for somebody who's very familiar with the Talmud, right? Yeah. And Cal says, but the anti-Semites on the internet said they were able to finish it in 3 days. Yeah. When I was in yeshiva, we would spend about a week on each few lines. Uh, like it. We went through maybe 30 pages in a year, and that was in my Bacute. So we had two classes. One of them was when we spent real in depth, and the other one we were going quickly. In the Bacute one, in a year we did 30 pages. So like the Talmud is really, really huge. So whether there was a story like that in the Talmud, it's quite possible. There's all kinds of stories. If you get me a citation, I can look it up.
I'll have to look it up and see if I can find it. When I read it, it was probably almost a decade ago now. So I'll see what I can find and give you if I can find. Do you have chapters and verses in the Talmud that if I found that would?
It doesn't go chapters and verses. It's tractates and pages.
Okay.
So there are officially 60, but really 63 tractates of the Talmud.
Okay.
And it starts on page 2 because the first page is the title page, and each page has 2 sides. So, for example, something might be on page 100A or 100B of Sanhedrin, right? So it would be written Sanhedrin 100B, right?
Okay.
And if you just say that, then it would be referring to the Babylonian Talmud. Okay. Yoav says, I seem to remember this story, but I don't know the source. It sounds like a story that could have been, yeah, very much. That type of story, like there's a lot of in the Midrash and the thing. Cal, where did you study? 2.5 daf be'iyun. In a year, I'm guessing you mean. It is possible, yeah, to spend to do 2.5 pages in a year be'iyun at the Mir. Oh wow, you studied at the Mir, Cal. You have to come on. A real student. Okay, you did 2.5. Yeah, 2.5 be'iyun. Well, that's the Mir. The Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem is the largest yeshiva in Jerusalem. It is it is a very well respected yeshiva. Rabbi Pinchas Levin, who came on my channel once or twice. He ended up deleting his YouTube channel. He was a Rosh Chabura at the Mir for a good 20 years. Yevamot. I went from the frying pan into the fire. Where did you learn before the Mir? I mean, Yevamot. I've never learned Yevamot, but like, yeah, 2.5 pages. I mean, if you're doing half a daf, if you're doing an amud a day, be'iyun, that is definitely breakneck speed. Okay, so you were in Lakewood. With the Misnagdim, Rahman al-Islam. Lakewood is in the United States. Lakewood Yeshiva in New Jersey. Yeah, so you were asking about the pages of the Talmud. Yeah, I mean, you can. The entirety of both Talmuds is available in English on Sefaria for free. I keep on pointing that out to people. It's recent that the Jerusalem Talmud has been available. I'm raised Hasidish, but Misnagdish at heart. Which Hasidic thing? I'm guessing your name is Colonymus. So Colonymus is a Hungarian name, right? There's you're from the Hungarian Hasidim. Satmar. Ooh. when I was still Colonimus Eliezer, how did I know? Satmar, ooh, wow. So I have Al Hagula Valatmura up there. I have another book of the Satmar Rebbe up there, I think. When I was in Israel, I became aware of. I read the book Perfidy, and when I read Perfidy, I decided to. I was no longer a Zionist, and that's when I became a huge fan of the Satmar Rebbe. And it was only after a while that Chabad kind of cooled me down on my anti-Zionism. But yeah. So I may be one of the biggest defenders of Rabbi Eilish around here. You didn't finish the story. So the chassan at the wedding ended up Misa Mishuna. Is that what you're telling me? I have it as well. I actually took care of an elderly man who was the Rebbe's Hois Bocher a few months ago. He wrote an autobiography in Yiddish on his time there. Very nice. That's what happened. So I'll tell you the story of the Rebbe and mixed dancing. What apparently happened was there was a wedding in Chabad and there was mixed dancing. And some of the Rabbanim, they didn't dance. They were sitting at a table while mixed dancing was happening, and somebody called 770 to ask, I believe, Rabbi Chodakov what to do. And apparently, the Rebbe grabbed the phone and said to them, said to that person to go to the rabbi's table and ask them, the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants to know who gave them a heter for Gimel Chamoros. And when that happened, all of the rabbis ran out of the wedding. So yeah, mixed dancing in Hasidic circles is part of the problem. Is that it happens, and because it happens, it's what that and television people talk about a lot. There was an English bio that was put out on the Satmar Rebbe a while ago. I think the story is in there. Interesting. I have not seen any of the English bios on Rabbi Eilish, and frankly, I would be very suspect of any bios on Rabbi Eilish because Rabbi Eilish is a controversial figure. When people ask me about Rabbi Eilish, I talk about the fact that now the Siget dynasty is known as Satmar, and I talk about the fact that Tomchei Shabbos was started by the Satmar Rebbe, which everybody forgets about. There are hundreds of Hasidic dynasties. Satmar is the largest, especially if you only count people who are strictly. I mean, Satmar is very strict. The Rabbi Eilish was very strict, and the community. I mean, I hate to say it. I do have certain certain criticisms. I feel I have to be willing to publicly voice regarding Satmar. Who am I to do that? But if somebody asks me, yeah, Satmar isn't perfect either, even Satmar. But it is definitely Rabbi Eilish was a hero of mine. My biggest, I mean, the chinuch of women in Satmar is, I believe, verges on not being Shulchan Aruch. It verges on I mean, Rahmana Litzlan, a few years ago, there was a big story about 4 Orthodox Jewish girls who got baptized. There's even YouTube videos. And it was not at all surprising that they were 4 girls from a Satmar high school, unfortunately.
Baptized into what?
Well, they were just doing it just to piss their parents off. So nobody they went to a Baptist church and yeah, they went to a Baptist church and on video got baptized and yeah, it was quite obvious why they were doing it, which is why even Christians don't talk about it very much. But look, at some point you have to say this is not Shulchan Aruch. At some point, this is a. I mean, I don't have to talk about the people who go so far that like the Ada Haredis and everybody else speaks out against them, but there are things in Satmar which are unfortunate. We have with us Professor Dr. Marcus Shera, the fellow, the postdoctoral fellow at Chapman University that we were talking about earlier. Tim also is an alum of Chapman.
Nope.
You're also at Chapman?
I'm an alumni of Chapman. I graduated 20 years ago.
Awesome. And I'm also Orthodox, so Eastern Orthodox. Christian Eastern Orthodox.
Nice. Do you go to St. Barnabas?
No, I just moved here a week and a half ago.
Okay.
So I've been to St. Luke's.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably the closest to Chapman.
Yeah. But I'm also
one in what's the city there? Blanking on it.
Garden Grove.
Garden Grove, yeah.
Yeah.
Much bigger parish.
Marcus is Armenian, isn't he?
Yeah, I am. Proudly. I've got my flag and then my chachpad.
What is that?
It's an Armenian style of cross carving.
Okay.
So they're either in stone or in wood usually.
Huh. What did you call it?
Chachpad is Armenian for cross wood.
Okay. Chachpad.
But you'll hear people talk about chachkars, which are very prominent in Armenian architecture, like stones carved or crosses carved into stone and into church walls and stuff like that.
Nathaniel Franco apparently knows somebody named Perry at St. Barnabas.
Perry Robinson?
I don't know Perry at St. Barnabas.
That's the only Perry I know at St. Barnabas, but doesn't mean there aren't more.
Nathan says yes.
Okay. I'm actually having dinner with him tomorrow night.
You should invite Professor Dr. Marcus Shera. You're in Costa Mesa, right?
Just for the next week. And then I'm back in Idaho.
Dude, why didn't you say something? You could have come to the Orange County Street Fair with us yesterday. I didn't
know that it was going on.
Well, if you had contacted me, you have my cell phone number, I'm sure.
I don't.
It's very easy to find my cell phone number.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if you go to fatorecci.com, it's right there.
See, I didn't even know you had a website.
It's for my insurance business, but still
Okay.
has my thing there. Yeah, we were sitting there eating and drinking. Well, we were only drinking at his place yesterday. And my dog was panting because we walked so much. Happy's getting old. Happy's getting very old. She's going to be 12 soon. So what are you doing in Costa Mesa?
Visiting family. So this coming weekend, I'll be driving up to Ventura to visit my parents. We're currently visiting my wife's parents. And then visiting all of our former friends at St. Barnabas.
Were we planning on doing anything this week? I'm trying to think if we were trying on doing anything this week. Somebody mentioned like trying to get together on Wednesday or something. I mean, there's the Chino Estuary on Tuesday. I wasn't planning on going. What's his name is going? Trey is going. I don't know who else is going.
I'll be at Disneyland on Wednesday, so
what?
I'll be at Disneyland on Wednesday.
Disneyland honestly has just gotten so expensive. I can't imagine it being worth the ticket anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got to fulfill a promise to my oldest daughter, who's been begging me to let her go on the Incredicoaster since she was 2.
This is how they get you. This is how they get you.
So she's finally tall enough to go on it. So
how much is a ticket to Disneyland these days?
I want to say they were $120 a person.
Wow.
For a park hopper to go between both parks
in
a single day. So, yeah, which is crazy because when I went to Chapman, my annual pass for with no blackout days was $120.
Well, in Los Angeles, having an annual pass to Disneyland has kind of become a status symbol because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And it's been a way of basically being like, okay, I don't want to deal with people who aren't rich. It's like a gated social community of Los Angeles now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the annual passes are ridiculously expensive now.
Yeah. That actually, I think you have to be grandfathered in now because I think they stopped selling annual passes last year or something like that.
I could believe it. I could believe it. Can you tell I'm not somebody who has it?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't seem to find online.
So the other reason why, at least prior to COVID, the other reason why a lot of people had annual passes, especially here in Orange County, was if they were a part of the swing dance community.
Mm-hmm.
Every Saturday night, because of it's a tradition that Walt Disney started, they'd always bring in a live swing band at Carnation Plaza. And for those of us that like swing dancing to live music, it actually was a really good deal.
I found an article from April 10th, 2023. The Disneyland Resort announced Monday that it would resume sales of its Magic Key annual pass on April 11th. All pass types, including the Enchanted Key, will be available for purchase. Inspire Key, $1,599. Free standard parking, 20% off selected merchandise, 15% off select food and drink, unlimited Disney Photo Pass digital downloads, and 20% off Disney Genie Plus. The cheapest one is $449.
Yeah.
Just to update you guys, I just triggered the fire alarm and then undid it. So that's what I've been doing while you're talking.
Why did you trigger the fire alarm?
Because I'm getting used to an electric stove mostly.
Like, all you need to do is warm up the lahmacun. What else do you eat?
Well, you said you were eating steak, so it reminded me I have one in the fridge.
I am, in fact, eating steak. An air fryer is a beautiful thing. And it's not very expensive. But while you're down in Los Angeles, we should meet up sometime.
Yeah, just
Find my cell phone.
Okay.
You can just Google Jacob Federacci. My cell phone will be right there.
Yep.
I like to say anybody who can't find my cell phone is too dumb for me to talk to. And text me. And we'll figure it out. I have classes on Thursdays, and Wednesdays are usually busy. But other than that, my times are usually
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to compare with my wife's schedule and what she has planned for us.
Yeah. You said you were going to Disneyland on Wednesday?
Yep.
You might actually want to go to Chino on Tuesday, the estuary there. Trey will be there. I don't know who else is planning on going. David and Elijah were talking about possibly going.
I would like to go, but I might be busy and I might not have a ride.
You know what, Marcus? If you're not busy, ask Richard. Richard might be, he's at Biola. He might be willing to drive you.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, I mean, to some extent, it's weird how international the YouTube audience of that I interact with through my channel is, because like Chezi was on. He's from Israel. I believe Mateus is in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. We certainly get a lot of Canadians, etc. But like, I also end up spending a lot of time talking to people who are pretty close by. Yeah. Oh, I guess Mateus isn't in Germany. Why did I think Mateus was in Germany? Where are you, Mateus? Brazil. Yes. How could I possibly, like, I'm sorry, we're Americans. Brazil, Germany, like, it's not America. What's the difference? I'm joking just a little bit.
Especially since Brazil is South America.
South America. I mean, you are on Tim? You are on X, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You sometimes message me, right?
I don't think I've messaged you on X yet. I don't usually. I use it more just for perusing, and then I think I've only responded to a couple people on there that I didn't know at all, just because I had some information to answer the questions that they were asking.
Cal, there is definitely a Discord. Would love to have you join the Discord. There's a link in the description. Let me know if the link doesn't work. Connie has a very good question, which is, oh wow, like what's going on in Brazil? But back to X, 3-year Letterman. If you are not following that account, I love that account so much. It is one of the bright points in life for me, because it's a satirical account that just makes fun of people who are crazy on the internet, and like, yeah, my favorite accounts on Twitter are Jarvis, which is funny and sometimes satirical. Um, Red Steez, Stephen Miller, that Stephen Miller Red Steez, because he makes fun of people, although he's not satirical or comical. And 3-year Letterman, because he makes fun of everybody. Um, yeah, those accounts make life bearable partially for me, which is why I spend way too much time on Twitter.
Yep. So if it doesn't work this time, we'll be back in California next September or August.
Hey, whenever you figure it out, like if you're ever in Los Angeles, if you ever need to crash on my couch, you let me know. Mateus, is there an election coming up in Brazil? Like, what is going on?
Election just happened in Brazil, as far as I know. That's part of why all this crackdown stuff is happening.
What'd you say? Sorry.
I believe the election already happened, and the crackdown is actually related to what happened after the election.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know what's going to happen in Brazil.
Let's just say it's kind of similar to what's been happening to Trump.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was just listening to Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter, and it amazes me that like John McWhorter, like, my hope is ultimately the Democrats will go far enough that John McWhorter will finally be like, okay, my Trump derangement syndrome is over. But yeah, he's still like, I was listening to them talk about RFK Jr. and I was like, really? That's what you think of RFK Jr.? Like he's just put him on the Trump, like yeah, he's just an asshole. It's like, oh god.
What was his view on RFK Jr. prior to RFK Jr.
Well, I mean,
Trump?
I don't know, but he basically said on this stream I was listening to, he was like, yeah, you could see this coming from months ago. And I didn't see this. I saw Tulsi from actually years ago moving away from the Democrats. I think they red pilled her with Bernie Sanders. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what this election is going to be like. Like Friday night, we were over at my sister's for dinner.
Yeah.
And there was a family member who was vociferously, passionately, and irrationally arguing that Trump was not shot.
Yeah. You can include my brother in that list.
And it was like, oh my God, what world am I living in? And of course, like, my dad was like, don't argue with him, don't argue with him. But it was because my dad was like, what, you think you're gonna make him like actually realize that this is insane thing to say, you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't understand how I mean, this family member has always been very on the left and weirdly so, but like Trump didn't get shot. Like, what? You think the Secret Service was in on it with him?
Yeah. That's pretty much from what I've seen from my friends and family that go down that route. It was an inside job that Trump basically coordinated to boost his popularity.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the Secret Service is all on Team Trump. It's just so amazing to me.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, if assuming, and like I said, because there's no way to know if there was cheating that happened in the last election, if they're able to do that, then my assumption is that they would cheat in this election, but in a different way. So that way they could actually then send Trump to prison for cheating and basically frame him that he cheated.
Okay, so this is my thing with the cheating in the 2020 elections. I am disappointed that Trump couldn't make this case better.
Yeah.
I personally, I was censored during the 2020 elections. I am not the most crazy person in the world, I hope, right? And being censored made me feel that this is not a fair election.
Right.
And millions of people felt that censorship. Like I did try to text the things to friends and was not allowed to direct message them to friends, which really bothered me.
Was
Right.
this over like SMS text or Twitter?
I know it happened on Facebook. I'm pretty sure it happened on Twitter as well.
But not like SMS or the normal cell network or anything.
No. Yeah. And like you cannot tell me. I don't know. Like, I know what made me feel like this is not a fair election. So I don't. The people who are like the 2,000 mules and ballot stuffing and stuff. I know enough about how elections work. I don't think there was significant amounts of ballot stuffing. But I know why people feel like there was.
I think the biggest mistake that was made is there wasn't a effort to even look into it. Instead, everybody wanted to suppress even looking into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to me, that all that does is, even if there wasn't any shenanigans, it basically just automatically makes the government guilty, because I think the best way to describe it is that, unlike an individual, the government should always be guilty until proven innocent.
And when you look at what happened January 6th, like, I'm sorry, like, what kind of right-wing insurrection is unarmed? And I've said this like an uncle of mine I love, who's actually very reasonable, and at a thing I was like, it was unarmed. He's like, no, they brought arms with them. And I'm like, please check for me You will see. And days later, he sends me an article of they found guns in the people left in their truck, right?
Right.
And I'm like, you realize what this is, right? And like he doesn't mention it anymore. So I think it did kind of give him some pause. But at the same time, I don't think it's kind of like he's kind of grasped, oh, that means this whole story is completely bullshit.
Right.
Speaking of which, do we know anything else about the kid from Butler?
No. And
Last I heard, his body disappeared, and they found it later that it had been already given back to the family, and they cremated his body.
yeah, his body was given to the family and it was cremated pretty quickly. I personally think that's absolutely irrelevant. There is a type of murder which consists of like you allow enough negligence into the system that, like, of course there were people who were going to try to shoot at Trump. The fact he got as far as he did, the level of incompetence that allowed that to happen doesn't just verge on maliciousness. That is a level of competence that I don't care to distinguish from maliciousness.
Right.
And then there's Ray Epps. And it's like, hello. But yeah, my channel is small enough. I don't care if I get demonetized, but we are saying this stuff on YouTube, which is one of the reasons I would like us to get off of YouTube, by the way. But Rumble is pretty hard to stream to. And everybody's on YouTube. Happy, you can beg as much as you want. You are not getting any steak. I am going to give her some more of her own food because she did finish her food. Dr. Marcus, tell us something. You're a wise man.
Make sure that you know what you're going to do with data before you spend 2 months collecting it. Or else you're wasting your time.
Okay. What? Let me read this note by Reb Colonimus here. I'm of the opinion that there is an incurable illness in both parties. At this point, it's terminal. I'm hoping that what Trump is doing will transition into a new party completely. No, actually, I think that the Republican Party is going to withstand this. I don't see the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party has to die and a new party has to take its place. We'll see what happens, but the Democratic Party as it exists is just too corrupt. What data did you spend 2 months gathering that you don't know what to do with?
It was a bunch of data on Protestants in England.
Okay.
And it's not a total waste, but I finished a good chunk of it today, and then I was in the shower and I was like, wait, what am I going to do with this exactly? It's going to be useful, it wasn't a total waste of time, but
what were you trying to look for specifically in the data?
Well, we're doing a paper where we're looking at the English Reformation and where Protestantism was more active relative to where people were able to basically take over land from the church, and therefore people that got material benefits from the end of Catholicism wanted to secure Protestantism so that they didn't have to give those lands back if Catholicism returned to England. And so knowing where the Protestants were active at various times is very useful.
Like I said, Dr. Shara here is possibly the foremost authority in the world on the legitimating actions of on the economics of the legitimating actions of religious orders in Christian societies.
That might be true.
I have this little fetish of trying to elevate the voices of people who actually know stuff. And so I have several friends who never ever introduce themselves as doctor, even though they have PhDs. But I always introduce them as doctors to other people. I actually think it's one of the woke spells where they get people to not call themselves doctor when they have a PhD. And then you get people like Jamal Bowman, who has a doctorate in education, walking around calling himself a doctor, and other people who get honorary doctorates and call themselves doctors. Yeah. Bothers me just a tiny bit.
So, Marcus, what made you choose to continue your research at Chapman?
They offered me a job. Yeah, and the people here are. I mean, I was literally telling people I'm so lucky to have this position because, like, if I was offered even a postdoc at a more prestigious place and this one, I might take this one over like a Harvard postdoc. Just let's say because the people here are doing things that are so specifically related to the stuff that I'm researching that, like, going somewhere else, there wouldn't be anyone to work with. Basically, I'd have the prestige, but I wouldn't have the actual people there to talk to that would be interested in what I'm interested in talking about.
Who's the dean now at the religion school?
I don't know, but I'm not in religion. I'm in economics.
Oh, okay. So you're in the business department then?
No, I'm with the Smith Institute. So I'm with an institute at the university. I don't know how long the Smith Institute's been here. Maybe not even 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar to me, but yeah, if it's in the last 10 years,
Yeah, all the professors that are with it migrated from George Mason, where I got my PhD, or a number of them.
Okay.
Migrated from Mason here.
And I thought you chose it because it brought the chances you would find a nice Armenian girl to marry way higher than anywhere else. Yeah, I am pretty sure Los Angeles has the highest concentration of Armenians outside of Armenia, anywhere in the world.
I'm pretty sure it does, and I think if there's a second, it's in France or in Lebanon. I mean, but maybe not even anymore.
There are not that many Christians left in Lebanon.
The Armenians stayed in their quarter in Beirut, mostly.
Okay. I wish them safety.
Like, we still have plenty of family members there.
I still have some family in Iran. Believe it or not, it's my Baha'i family that stayed in Iran.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Baha'is religiously aren't actually allowed by their own religion to live in Israel, which is kind of strange.
Is it like a I mean, since when?
So their one of their or two of their religious leaders moved to Haifa, and that is where their international headquarters is. But like when he was moving to Israel, there was a sort of there was a lot of concern from the Jewish community that they would be evangelical and stuff, and he just declared that Baha'is aren't allowed to live without special permission, aren't allowed to live in Israel at all.
Mm.
And that has been going on, I believe, since before the establishment of the State of Israel.
Because if I get it Baha'i correctly, it very much has a peacekeeping mindset. So that would be anything to avoid offense of any of the major Abrahamic religions they'll adopt.
There's definitely some of that. I was kind of surprised at the vehemence of it. I had an uncle who lived in Florida, who was religious enough to care that when he went to Israel to visit my family, like he wanted to stay for 2 weddings, and he couldn't get permission to stay for both weddings. Like they're really strict on, I think like there's a 10-day limit of visiting, something like that. And it was like to the point where he had to decide which wedding he could go to. And I just found that bizarre.
You know, Rainn Wilson from The Office is Baha'i.
I haven't actually watched The Office.
Well, Dwight, if you know Dwight.
I actually haven't watched The Office. Believe it or not, I am that much of a dweeb.
Okay, you're not missing much, Jacob.
I hear it's
good. It's good. I recommend it.
I didn't get into it. It was too painful to watch.
Oh, is it a lot of cringe?
It's, I don't know, maybe it was one of those things that working for, a huge corporate entity that it was too close to home.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah.
Jacob, do you like Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I think I've watched some of it. I honestly, so when I was religiously observant, I didn't have a television. And even when I stopped being religiously observant, I still don't have a television. I will binge watch sometimes things that I'm interested in, but generally I will only binge watch if something has at least 3 seasons to it, and I'll watch the entire thing. Yeah, I think I've watched some episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but like it was okay. I think I watched. There was an episode where he was using a MAGA hat to stop people from talking to him.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might even get things that other people don't get because it's like LA Jew community stuff.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Except once you go to New York.
Los Angeles is pretty like, and a lot of the television places like to put in kind of Los Angeles only Easter eggs that you have to be from Los Angeles to get. Like I remember watching, the movie Swingers.
No.
Well, I guess it's before your time, but it was a movie. It was an okay movie. And there's this scene where he goes to get phone numbers from a girl he sees, and he comes back and his friends say 818, and he says 310, and like you have to be from Los Angeles to get
Those are
that
area
joke.
codes.
Yeah, they're area codes, and like it no, not anymore, but back then it was very meaningful which area code you had, because back then, like, I kid you
Hang
not,
on, Jacob. 818 is Beverly Hills, right? And 301 was Manhattan Beach.
no, 818 was the Valley and 310 was the West Side, including Beverly Hills.
Okay.
Yeah. 213 was major Los Angeles. But I remember one time I was at work calling someone, and I knew that they lived in 818, but it was a 310 phone number. And this was way back. This was 25 years ago, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry to ask, but like, how do you have a 310 phone number? And she said, yeah, we pay for the forwarding because, I mean, this was a gated community in Bel Air, right? And it was on the other side of Mulholland Boulevard. Mulholland is like the dividing line between the Valley and the West Side. And like, it was just so funny to me. And I know that back then, like, a forwarding like that would be really expensive because you also had to pay per minute, right, for it to be forwarded like that. Every time somebody called the 310 phone number, you were paying for it to be forwarded per minute. Like, toll calls used to be a thing. Yeah. Should I let Trey on? Trey didn't even come yesterday to Marcus's place.
Is Marcus on right now?
Marcus is on right now. Andrew is here.
Yeah.
He's the one going dun 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 in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear him. Nope. Okay.
No, we can hear him. Very, very softly.
What's poppin'? How's it going, Tim? I've heard your new house.
I am. I'm in Costa Mesa. I'm right out. If you know where the In and Out is, there, right on the 405 and Harbor, about 3 miles. Or sorry, about 4 blocks south of that.
You know where the Costa Mesa Women's Club is?
No.
I used to run all kinds of magic. I was a judge for all kinds of magic tournaments over there in Costa Mesa. That's what I used to go down there for. Trey is attempting to join, but for some reason, there he is. Hello, Trey.
Hello.
What's poppin'? So Marcus, Trey is the troublemaker of our group.
Okay.
I'm sure you had to meet him.
Trey is definitely the ginger.
I am.
He is.
Sure is. Nice.
Are you going on Tuesday? I'm not sure Marcus heard you, Trey. Are you going on Tuesday to Chino?
Yeah, I'm going on. Yeah.
Okay, I may try to make it too, but I would need a find transportation. But I also might be busy that day anyway.
I think Richard. I mean, I don't know if classes have started in Biola. If Richard is going, He said he's only half an hour from Chapman.
Mm.
Yeah. Viola's kind of over by Knott's Berry Farm.
Ah. So Tim, where are you at, or what state are you in now? If you're just visiting here.
I live in Idaho now.
Uh huh.
Yeah, but I was born and raised here. I was actually born at Cedar Sinai, a couple blocks away from the Oscars. And lived in El Segundo initially, and then my parents moved to Thousand Oaks. And then when I was 3.5, they moved to Oxnard. And then when I was 16, I went off to Chapman.
Oh, it's 16.
And, yep. And then graduated when I was 19 and moved back home for a little while until my best friend graduated from USC. And then we moved out together to Torrance, and I lived there for 3 years with him. And then moved to Anaheim Hills, met my wife, and we moved to Santa Ana when we got married, and then eventually bought a place in Fullerton, and then and during COVID, we ended up selling it and buying a place in Idaho.
Mm. And what do? Do you farm?
I am a software engineer.
Okay, that works too.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, my sister and her husband live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Amish country, but he's a software engineer.
Okay. Yeah, my aunt and uncle live in that part of Pennsylvania as well.
Mm.
Tim, do you have any advice to a young software programmer like me? What do you think of clean code? What's your thoughts as a veteran?
Definitely a big proponent of clean. And what was the other? There's an acronym that I can never remember it right now. Solid.
Okay, but what's your advice about getting married young?
Do it.
Really? You think people should get married young?
Yeah, because if you wait too late, I mean, I guess kind of depends on what you mean by young, but I mean, if you wait too late, you're increasing risks of having more complications in pregnancy.
That's definitely a thing.
If you're a
And
woman.
also, your body starts falling apart, especially when you hit 40.
So, what would you consider young to get married?
I would say probably. I mean, super young would be, like 19 or 20. That might be a little too young, but like, I think the happy medium is probably like, say, 25, 28.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 28, turning 29, I think, if I remember correctly. Let's see here. I was born in 82 and I got married in 2011.
Were you already EO back then?
No. But soon after, so after we got married, I think it was after we were married for about a year is when we became Eastern Orthodox.
And you decided that together?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Good.
My wife grew up confessional Lutheran.
Okay. Was she Protestant as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Lutheran then.
It was Lutheran, so it's much closer to Orthodoxy. The other thing too is she almost converted to Catholicism when she was in high school. She had a really good Catholic buddy that almost converted her to Catholicism. And
What were you before?
non-denominational. I was basically grew up in the vineyard.
Mm.
So charismatic, Pentecostal. But my mom, so what happened was just to do it a quick overview. My grandmother was the firstborn here in America. because my great grandparents immigrated here from Yugoslavia just before the Bolshevik Revolution. My grandmother didn't really practice her orthodoxy, and so my mom didn't grow up in a particular religious home. However, they did have my mom get communion with her first communion in a Roman Catholic church, because I think my grandfather was supposedly Roman Catholic, but again didn't really practice his faith. And so when my mom was 18, she converted to the Baptist church, and that's where she met my dad. But her theology actually never matched Baptist or even Vineyard theology, which I didn't really learn until I got to Chapman and started seeing all the different denominations. Like, okay, where does my mom's theology even come from?
Yeah.
And that's when I rediscovered the Orthodox Church, even though I have cousins that are cradle Orthodox.
Right.
I just assumed Eastern Orthodoxy was basically just the Russian form of Catholicism. So, yeah, that's kind of the short story, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny when people ask me, or I was talking to my boss, and he was like, "So wait, are you you're Greek Orthodox, or are you Russian Orthodox?" And I was like, "Well, both, but also neither since 2018, but hopefully soon."
Right. Is that because of the what happened with the split over?
Yeah, because they're
Indian church.
But I've never regularly attended either a Russian or Greek church. The church I was at in Virginia was Romanian, and now there's Antiochian churches mostly out here.
Yeah. Yeah, St. Luke's is the sister church to St. Barnabas.
Okay, I will definitely be looking up St. Barnabas too.
That one's a little bit further. It's right here in Costa Mesa.
Okay.
So we traditionally, I think we usually always co-celebrate on Holy Unction. We all meet up at St. Luke's because St. Luke's has a much bigger parish than St. Barnabas.
Yeah, we used to do Holy Unction with our sister church too.
What's Holy Unction?
It's in the Catholic world, it's what they call the anointing of the sick. So it's ritual prayer and then consumption of this blessed oil that's for physical healing. But it's one of the sacraments.
And takes place during Holy Week in Lent.
So the entire congregation does it?
Yep.
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to the Eucharist in that way. Yeah.
And you eat the oil?
Yeah, from a spoon, from the bishop or from the priest.
Apparently, the Copts don't eat the oils.
I've never really taken it, so.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be eaten. Sometimes they put it on your forehead or something.
Yeah, St. Luke's is always just put it on our forehead. I've never eaten it.
Uh-huh.
So that might be. Is that maybe a Armenian unique?
No. Well, no, I've never done it in an Armenian church, but in certain situations they have them eat it. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I've never eaten it, so.
I've never eaten it either. In fact, it's against my religion to make the holy oils outside the temple. So we don't do that at all. We also don't do incense, which surprised a lot of people.
Huh.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I didn't really get an answer to my question, Tim.
Okay.
What would you recommend to me? So, like, I am 2.5 years into my career. I am basically at a boring tech company that my position isn't really going to go anywhere. So I'm looking for other opportunities.
So the one that I would say is that while you're in a job and getting paid, I would say try and get involved with a couple of open source projects that interest you
Okay.
or can challenge your skill set. Because that'll help when you want to switch jobs. You can show actual work that's available publicly, where oftentimes when you do work for whatever corporate entity has hired you, because of all the non-disclosure agreements that you end up signing, you can never actually show the work that you do.
Right. Follow-up question to that. When hypothetically, if one were to work on these open source things, and let's say they're working a 9-hour shift, right?
Yeah.
What percentage of that 9-hour shift are they working on open source?
Ideally, if you can sneak it in and make it a part of, like let's say you're using maybe at your company, you might be using some open source technology. One way you could do it to kind of kill two birds with one stone is get involved with the ones that your company is already using. It may not be as interesting, but at least then you can show, especially if you're responding like sort of tickets or asking stuff, they can sort of see like what your communication style is like, and as well as like how you contribute to a project.
Okay.
So yeah, it does require. I think the main thing you're getting at is like how many hours outside of work do I need to be doing this? You want to have enough so that way you basically almost kind of have a portfolio. So it's kind of like, just like how artists have a portfolio of sort of samples of things that they've just drawn over time.
Yeah.
You kind of want to have a portfolio of software that you've written, so that way they can look at it and see sort of what your coding style is like.
Okay.
Another way you could do it too is, if you don't want to put a lot of time into it and just make it like a long-term project, is maybe take like what I do when I learn a new language is I actually take a project class that I was assigned at Chapman, which was create it was an emulator for an operating system called Forth. And each time I've learned a new language, I basically just use that same project, which was my final project in Comp Sci at Chapman, because it was a really good sort of way to figure out, how that particular language works and what its strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then I just publish it to GitHub, so that way when I'm on interviews, I can point to them, hey, here's, what I've done.
Okay.
So how much are you going to charge Trey for all this advice? I mean, you're consulting for free for like expensive advice.
And I lost them.
Yeah, you'll see a check in the mail for
Yep.
an invoice for $300 for 20 minutes advice. I try and take advice from my lawyer friends of how they charge. So
Have I met you before?
You're droiding on us, Kirk. Sorry, Kirk. You droided on us. We can't hear you. And Trey left us.
Testing.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah. Are you still in Oregon?
Okay. Sorry, it might be too on my end. I have to be drawn up streams. Just like
I don't know if you guys heard Kirk, but I didn't hear Kirk.
Yeah, it was like
Sorry, Kirk. Kirk is 16. He he used to live in Louisiana. Now he's living somewhere near. and at various points he has considered himself a noahide and or converting to Judaism, Orthodox or conservative. But yeah, he comes on every once in a while.
My dad used to collect Mad magazines like back in the 70s, and he had one that was like Introduction to Religion or something. And there was one that was like, there's 3 kinds of Jews: Orthodox Jews, conservative Jews, and Reformed Jews. And the Reformed Jews, the other Jews call Christians.
Yeah, Reform. I mean, I tend to be rather mean to Reformed Jews, but I mean, considering how mean I am to our Christian friends, they deserve it.
I have a friend who's Reformed Jewish. I mean, like to the extent that he's an atheist. And he was explaining that one thing that they do at temple is offer sacrifices that are their prayers, or their prayers are their offerings.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Not just me. Hosea 14:2 says it directly. It's like,
So, I was wondering if that was a Reformed Jew thing or not.
no, that's Hosea. Yeah. So this is, I mean, so Pharisaic Judaism, unlike other forms of Judaism that were popular during the Second Temple period, consistently was not a huge fan of the Second Temple, and maintained the synagogue services, which we believe were instituted by the prophets during the interregnum between the first and the second temple. And that's not reform. That's just basic Judaism.
So is Reformed Judaism, for lack of a better term, sort of the liberal branch of Judaism then?
So to explain, what happened was during the emancipation of the Jews under Napoleon, it became possible for the first time for people to be, I guess also under the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Joseph the something.
Yeah, it became possible for Jews to be not particularly not to be set apart into just the Jewish community, right? So Christians allowed, I mean, it was part of modernity. Like the Catholics, the word ghetto originally refers to where the Jews were allowed to live in the Papal States, right? So there was enforced church division between the Jewish community and the Gentile community. And what happened is that, actually, Marcus might know more about this than I do because his advisor wrote extensively on it. More than I have. What happened was that there was a movement within Judaism which called itself Reform after the Protestant Reformation, which claimed to be reforming Judaism in the same ways that the Protestant Reformation reformed Christianity. And as a response to that, Orthodox Judaism formed. which was which so reform only officially existed kind of in Germany, but in the United States there was very little Orthodox Judaism, and the people who came to the United States, even if they maintained their Judaism, did not were not necessarily very observant. They didn't keep kosher. Keeping the Sabbath was virtually unheard of in the United States. And so reform also kind of became popular for the people who wanted to maintain a religious identity in the United States as Jews. And so reform became, and to some extent still is, a majority of Jews in the United States. Outside the United States, it virtually doesn't exist at all. In other countries, all the synagogues are Orthodox, all the rabbis are Orthodox, but the congregation might not be very religious. In the United States, what often happens is even people who think true Judaism is Orthodox Judaism, they will go to a Reform or conservative synagogue. Sam Aronow has videos on this, which Yosef particularly likes. I have my disagreements. I mean, he doesn't get things wrong. When Useful Charts, who's a convert, I think he did not convert Orthodox, but he did convert to Judaism through one of these things. I think through renewal or something like that. Maybe even conservative. He when he made a video about Judaism, I did make a response video, and he ended up taking down his video, not just because of my response, but did include some of the things that I said. And I suggested he look into Henry Abramson's channel, which is really good. But generally, so what happened in the United States is that Reform split into two. Conservative split away from Reform because Reform was too, they felt was like at the first graduation of Hebrew Union College, which is the Reform seminary, they served frogs' legs. And
And that's not kosher, right?
No, frogs are not kosher. And so the conservative rabbis were like, yeah, we didn't expect the food to be kosher, but you don't have to, serve frogs' legs, right? I have seen the whatchamacallit, I can pull up the Treif Banquet menu. It's become a here is the actual menu of the Treif Banquet. It is available online because it's that famous.
So it was Barbara Streisand then?
Kind of, yes. There's a Barbara Streisand effect to the menu of the Treif Banquet.
Oh, I thought you were saying she's Reformed Jewish.
What?
Is she Jewish? No.
Barbara Streisand? Yeah, she's Reformed. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Little Neck clams, not kosher, on a half shell. Consommé Royale, I don't even know what that is. Filet de boeuf, I have no idea what that is. Champignon. Oh, isn't that shrimp? I guess there was shrimp. Soft shell crabs, again, not kosher. Salad of shrimp, again, not kosher. Sweetbreads, if sweetbreads are what I think they are, they're also not kosher. I have no idea what Petit Pois à la Française is. I have no idea what this stuff is.
Was it intentionally not kosher? It was
Yes.
like
Yes, it was intentionally not. I was sure there was frog's legs. I don't know where the frog's legs is though. This is all in French.
like Exodus, and like the ground opened up and swallowed them after this.
It didn't. That's not precisely what happened, but conservative Judaism, like the story is that conservative Judaism came because this was just one thing too far, and yeah, their thing was yeah, it was they yeah, so conservative was like, yeah, we agree with a bunch of the reform stuff, but we don't think you need to like specifically eat shrimp, you know? I was sure there was frog's legs there. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, there's definitely shrimp there, so Colonimus is correct. Anyway, so that's how Reform and Conservative split off. Orthodox Judaism, when it came to the United States, mostly it came to the United States because of the Holocaust. Most people thought that it was going to die out. Really, until the 60s and 70s, the assumption was that it was going to indeed die out. And what happened, partially because of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the leader of Chabad, there was a revival within the Orthodox community, and also, I mean, the state of Israel and the fact that only Orthodox Judaism is considered Judaism there. Like other form, like Reform and Conservative rabbis have no rabbinic ordination that's recognized by the state of Israel in Israel. And so Orthodoxy has been growing also because we have all the children, right? So, yeah.
All right, I gotta head to bed.
I should probably do the same.
But I will see you guys around.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Marcus Scherer.
See ya.
Yeah, unless there's something else. Okay, let's see what Colonimus has to say. There were some early pioneers, Rav Lazer Silver, I am not aware of him, the import of Lithuanian Gedolim. Gedolim are prominent rabbis. And the yeshiva day school system is what saved orthodoxy, in my opinion. And of course, the Hasidic dynasties. I think the Hasidic dynasties were what saved Orthodox Judaism. But that's why, as a Sephardic Jew, I ended up identifying among the Hasidim more than the Mitnagdim, despite the fact I went to Or Sameach, which is a Litvish yeshiva.
So why was the assumption originally that the Orthodox Jews would die out?
Part of it was just the idea that it was old-fashioned and like the arc of history was kind of like how Protestants kind of assume that like Catholicism is going to die out. I don't know if you've seen that kind of assumption among Protestants, especially here in the United States, but there's a kind of thing of like, well, I mean, yeah, there was Catholicism, and now we have the new thing which is taking over, right? And I mean, at a certain time, Orthodox Jews numbered less than 3% of the Jewish population in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, and although I think referring to any Orthodox Jew as a fundamentalist would be a mistake, because it's ultimately impossible to be a fundamentalist Orthodox Jew. That is how people view it. And I mean, yeah, living an Orthodox Jewish life is definitely a lot more difficult than living a Reform or conservative. It was even more difficult than it is now. Now it is a lot easier than it used to be. And yeah, being an observant Jew, especially in Israel, which is part of the reason so many Orthodox Jews move to Israel, is like, so for example, the high holidays this year, both days of Rosh Hashanah and 4 days of Sukkot, the festival of booths, all fall on the weekdays. So in addition to you cannot work for 25 hours on the Sabbath, there are actually almost all of them, I think this year, are 3-day holidays where it's a 72-hour period where you cannot use electricity, you cannot work at all, right? And like that was cause to lose your job, and still is sometimes. Like imagine being a first-year attorney and having something like that. Well, first of all, in Israel, as opposed to being 4 holidays, high holidays, 4 days of high holidays, the Festival of Tabernacles is only 2 days. So you're getting half off there. Everybody has the same holidays, right? Everybody's off on Saturdays, which makes it a lot easier. And all the food's kosher, so it's a lot easier to be an Orthodox Jew now than it used to be, and certainly in Israel than it used to be. But there's definitely been a huge revival since, I would say, the 60s and 70s. Partially what's called the Baal Tshuva movement, which has been a movement of Reform and conservative Jews who have started becoming Orthodox Jews. Yeah. Okay, it's getting late. Tim is falling asleep. I am falling asleep. My dog is falling asleep. I think I am going to end the stream. Good night, everybody.
Wake up.